Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to look at how to start a Prussian army. Now I'm doing something a little bit different with this one. I'm going to start with the more popular, easy to collect post 1812 army, but the Prussians that really interest me are the 1806 ones. So if that's a video that you'd like to see, then let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to make one of those as well. Now the rules are the same as always. We've got £100 to buy the core of our army from month one's pay packet, and then the following month, we've got another £100 to expand on it. Now the prices I quote will be RRP from the manufacturer's website at the time of writing, and many, especially the plastic sets, will be cheaper from third-party retailers. As always, I would recommend the Outpost would be my first go-to, but failing that, you've also got Element Games, or you can roll the dice with Wayland Games as well. This will be balanced slightly though, because I won't be including postage costs, and additionally I'll be assuming that the guy who's starting his Prussian army has already got all the tools, paint, glues, etc. that he needs, because I imagine the vast majority of people who come to Napoleonics, they don't come fresh from not having Wargaming before, but from, maybe Games Workshop or Bolt Action, something like that. So they've already got all those tools and equipment they need. Units will be 24 figures for a medium-sized infantry unit and 8 for a medium-sized cavalry, with large and small units obviously being comparable to that. I'm picking manufacturers that I like and the minis that I like. If you prefer a different manufacturer, or there's for some reason you don't want to order from this one, then that's absolutely fine. This is just a suggestion. I'm not saying this is how you must collect them or this is the best way to collect them. This is just to present you some ideas of how you can go around collecting a Prussian army. If there's other figures that you prefer than the ones that I've mentioned, pop them in the comments below and let other people see that there's other manufacturers out there and they might find something that they prefer to the bog standard ones as well. Now with that all said, let's get that out of the way and let's start looking at how we can throw some Prussians onto the tabletop. Now, in the previous videos of this series, I've gone down the buy what's cool and will give you a feel of the period route. But I'm going to look in this video at maybe creating a historical formation. In this case, I'm going to look at Hiller's 16th Brigade, because they took part in the iconic Battle of Place Noire and fought against the Young Guard towards the end of the Battle of Waterloo. So we're going to be focusing on them with some of their local units for support. So, jumping onto napoleon.org for the Prussian Order of Battle, I see that Hiller's Brigade had a regiment of 3 battalions, in this case the 15th Infantry Regiment, and 2 Landwehr regiments. The 1st and 2nd, and I'm going to absolutely butcher this, so apologies in advance. The 1st and 2nd Schlesisches Regiment. And again, each of these Landwehr regiments, I think we'll stick with Landwehr regiments, had 3 battalions. Now, as they form the largest part of the army, I'm going to suggest that we look at the Landwehr units first. And to do that, we'll head over to the Warlord Games site. Now, if I'm honest, I think their Landwehr miniatures are okay. They're not great, but they are okay. They do 2 bundles. The first is called the Landwehr Division Deal, which is 6 boxes of Landwehr, 2 mounted officers and casualties for £100. This gives you £16 saving on buying them individually and gives you enough boxes for the 3 battalions of each regiment. So that is, however, the entire month's budget, and it's a lot of Landwehr to be painting in one go. So while we could fill out our first month with the Landwehr, then I think we'll maybe spend a little bit more overall, but we'll split it up a little bit and have a little bit more of a exciting time, I think. What I would say though, as with the Austrian video, if you can spring to that, then I would recommend that you go for that deal. However, in this video, I'm going to recommend the smaller one, the £60 bundle, which is a Landwehr Brigade. Now you get 3 boxes and a mounted officer, so it's basically half the other one for £10 more. So that's why I would recommend the £100 one. But in this one, we're going to go for the £60 one. So it gives us a full regiment of 3 Landwehr battalions, and that's not quite as daunting on the painting pile. Be warned though, you might actually be able to get this bundle cheaper if you buy the boxes individually from third-party retailers. For example, the Outpost sells them at £17 a box, so for those 3 boxes that's £51, meaning that after buying the mounted officers that you get free with a bundle for £6, you'd still actually get them cheaper. Of course, that doesn't include the postage from 2 separate places, so it may not work out cheaper once you've paid the postage, but just bear in mind that the £60 bundle that we're going for, not necessarily the best deal if you can get them cheaper from other places. Anyway, so we've got a solid 3 battalions of Landwehr for our first £60, and we're going to stiffen them up by adding a box of Prussian infantry from Perry Miniatures for £20. These boxes are much better value than the Warlord Landwehr ones, giving us 46 minis, which is nearly double the number in the Warlord box. 6 of these figures are skirmishers, which allows us to make a tiny unit of the Landwehr Jaeger, skirmishers that were often attached to infantry battalions. So in reality it's a box of 40, 24 of which we'll use to make our first battalion of infantry, and we'll put the remaining 16 to one side because we've got plans for those guys next month. So, where do we stand now? Well, we've spent £80. We've got 3 battalions of Landwehr, 1 and most of a 2nd battalion of Prussian line, with a skirmish screen of a tiny unit of Landwehr Jaegers. We've also got 2 mounted officers. These guys, although they are Landwehr, they will do for now as our senior command. So, looking at what we need now, we need some support for our infantry. Now, in this case, I'm going to recommend a battery of artillery. We're attacking a fortified position, or well, not fortified, but a defensive position. So I think some artillery is going to be cool. Now, I often suggest that we use 2 guns for a battery, but you can get away with using 1, and that's what we're going to do. In this case, I'm going to recommend the Perry's PN8 foot artillery running up 7-inch howitzer. Now, I like the howitzer because, we're fighting in a built-up area, and howitzers I always associate with fighting in built-up areas, especially after we set fire to Hougoumont with our howitzers in the Waterloo game. It was particularly fun. And I really like the idea of them rushing the howitzers forward to keep up with the attack. So I think that's quite a nice one to go for. It will count as a battery of cannons anyway, so you can get a cannon if you prefer. Doesn't really matter. I like the howitzer because it makes me think of the fighting in the streets and things like that. And either way, it doesn't matter. From the Perrys, they're all £9.50, so that takes our running total to £89.50. So we've got £10.50 left. What we're going to spend with that? Well, as I was saying in many of the other videos, while we get the bases in the Perry boxes, they're not the frontage that I like. They're only 15mm wide per figure. I prefer 20. Now, if you are trying to squeeze every penny, use those bases. There's absolutely nothing wrong with them whatsoever. But I like the 20mm frontage, and we're going to need some bases anyway, because I don't think the Warlord figures come with bases. Don't quote me on that 100%, but I'm fairly sure, I'm 80% sure that they don't. So we're going to need some for those guys anyway. So we'll head over to war bases. We'll get 3 packs of 40mm square. That gives us 48 bases, and that's more than enough for what we have now. So it gives us a little bit of future proofing as well. £1.75 a pack, that's £5.25, which is, it's a little bit more than we need to spend, but it'll save us time and bother next month. We'll add a pack of 50mm round bases for our commanders, and for the howitzer, we'll get a pack of 60 by 75mm. Now, I'm still experimenting with artillery base sizes myself, so pick whatever size you like. You can do 50 by 100 or 50 by 75, I've seen. Whatever you and your group like to use. I think normally we base them too narrow, so I'm experimenting with using wider bases. Anyway, the rounds and the artillery base are going to be another £3.50. So that puts us on a total spend with war bases of £8.75, bringing us to a month one total of £98.25. So we're going to add our spare £1.75 to next month's budget. It's not very often that we come under budget on these videos, so that's quite a nice one. Now, one thing that we definitely don't need to buy, which sometimes we've had to at this stage, is flags. With all 4 boxes that we've bought this month, the Perry ones and the Warlord ones, containing sheets of flags. Now, I know there's like a massive debate around who carried what flags in 1815, but for me, I like all my units to have flags, so they do. So there you go. But anyway, what do we have at the end of our first month? Well, we've got 2 mounted officers, which, while they are Landwehr ones, we can use them as brigade commanders. We've got 3 battalions of Landwehr. We've got 6 guys left over. We've got 1 battalion of musketeers with 16 spares. We've got... sorry, I should point out that musketeers are different from fusiliers in the Prussian army. We'll come on to those in month 2, so don't worry about that. We've got 1 tiny unit of Landwehr Jaeger. We've got 1 artillery piece and all the flags and bases we're going to need. So it's a really good start. 4 battalions of infantry, some skirmishers and some artillery. So on to month 2, and this is where we can get the reinforcements and the exciting stuff. Maybe. Now I'm going to split this into 2 parts. In my opinion, the first one is the least interesting one, but it fulfills the brief we set at the beginning to collect Hiller's brigade. Or we can go down a second route, which I'll also talk about as well. Now, before we go anywhere, either way, we've got some unfinished business. We've got 16 spare musketeers. So it's back to the Perrys and another box of Prussian line infantry for £20. This will give us a 2nd battalion, a 2nd tiny Landwehr Jaeger unit, and another 16 spares, which allows us to create the 3rd battalion of our infantry regiment and still have some spares left over. Now, for those of you who've seen my latest video on the Prussian army, will know that the 3rd battalion were termed fusiliers and considered a light battalion, having a very, very slight difference in uniform. Now, there's 2 ways of representing this difference. The first is that the Perrys sell a pack PN11, and that allows you to convert up to 36 line infantry into fusiliers. It's basically a pack of 4 command minis, and they've got like extra packs for like the men. They've sort of got different equipment, and that costs £11.50. Alternatively, they very helpfully had a white circle on their Shako cover to denote fusiliers. So you could just get them straight out of the box, paint them exactly the same as the other Austrians, paint the white circle, it's like a hollow circle, on their Shako covers, done. Fantastic. That's the approach I'm going to recommend, but your mileage may vary depending on how much of a stickler you are. And we don't have a command for this 3rd battalion though, so we're going to add B23, which is from their individual sprue range, and that is a Prussian infantry command sprue. It will cost us the princely sum of £2, which I think is pretty good value. You can't even buy a pint for that these days. Now, obviously, this is in... it's an and/or thing for this one, because if you get the upgrade, then you get the command. So depending on which way you go here, we've either spent £22 or we've spent £31. But for that, we've finished our infantry regiment. We've got all 3 battalions with command. We've got the extra command for the 3rd battalion, and we've also got 12 guys left over. To complete Hiller's brigade, what we really need to do is do the 2nd Landwehr regiment. So we'd want to go back to the Perrys for another Landwehr brigade deal for the 60 quid. We'll add another cannon, and that would be Hiller's brigade complete. So we'd have 3 battalions of line infantry, including 1 of fusiliers, and 2 regiments of 3 battalions of Landwehr, plus their artillery. That's a little bit boring though. Basically the episode would be by month 1, the same again on month 2. You've got no cavalry, but you do have that historical formation. So we'd be at £91.50 or £82 if we bought just the sprue instead of the upgrade set. So, you know, we'd be under budget and we'd have that historical formation. So if we went for the running out howitzer in the first one, then I'd go for PN4 for that second cannon, which is running out a 6-pounder. At least the battery will then look like they're all doing the same thing. Or, you know, if you got firing cannons or howitzers or whatever in the first month, then go the same way with that as well. A 950, that finishes off if we bought the Fusilier parts, bringing us to £101. We saved £1.75 from month 1, so we still got £75 left over. So that's alright, you can buy yourself a Kit Kat to celebrate. If we went without the upgrade pack, and we got the command sprue instead, then we've got £12 to spare. So I'd recommend a high command set, either PN2, if you want the personalities, or if you just want senior officers, one that could represent Hitler himself, then I'd go for PN3. That would take us to £98. So that's the historical formation. As I say, we've got 2 Landwehr regiments, each of 3 battalions with command, and we've got 1 line regiment with 2 battalions of musketeers, 1 battalion of fusiliers. We've got 2 tiny Landwehr Jaeger regiments as well to go with those, and we've got the senior command and some artillery to support them. Now, how would I recommend that we organise these on the tabletop? Well, I would treat each regiment as its individual brigade. Because we've got 2 sets of mounted Landwehr command, I would put 2 figures on each base, because why not? We've got the spares. That's why I got the big bases, the 50mm ones. And I'd have each commander as the colonel of the regiment, and they would command them like that. If I bought PN3, I'd bung 2 of those on a base as a regimental command stand, and then an individual one to represent Hitler. The Jaegers would be part of the line brigade, and the artillery either separate or added into one of the brigades. So that's how I would organise them on the tabletop for the Prussians. I would have each regiment in this case as its own brigade effectively. So that's the first approach, and that fills our brief of creating Hitler's brigade for the attack on Place Noire. But for me, it lacks that third leg of the stool that makes Napoleonic so iconic. It's got no cavalry. It's a formation that I would recommend people wanting to start a second army, or maybe like a side project could do, because, you know, they've got cavalry in their first army, you know, things like that. And I think that, you know, it'd be a great small project, 200 quid, less if you can afford the Landwehr big deal the first month, and you've got a brigade that fought almost like a separate little battle in itself, which I think is super cool. But what I'm going to recommend in the second approach is a force that takes its inspiration from the attack on Place Noire, but it just adds a few more things as well. So the first month would remain the same, and the second month I'd go for that second box of line infantry to give us the 3 battalions of line. So we've got 3 battalions of line, again, one's a Fusilier one, and we've got 3 battalions of Landwehr. Now, because we're not going to go 100% historical here, I wouldn't bother with the Fusilier upgrade set. I'd either go for the extra command at £2, so we're £22 in for our second month's spend. I am going to suggest that we get another battalion of Landwehr though, and that gives us 2 regiments of 2 battalions. Now we've got a choice here. We can either get another plastic box, but I'm actually going to recommend that we do something a little different, that we splash out and buy from the Warlord Games website Napoleonic Prussian Regiment at Trail. They're Landwehr who are running, holding their muskets like parallel to the ground. It's just something a little bit different. It costs us an extra £5. They're £25, but we've saved a little bit by not splashing out on the Fusiliers, so we're currently at £47. So, you know, we're not doing too bad. Now, next up is a thing that's been missing from our army so far and is missing from our historical formation, and that is cavalry. Now, for me, one of the enduring images of Prussia I have is of her hussars. So I'm going to recommend that we pick up a box of the new resin Warlord Cavalry for another £24. Now, when I wrote this, they hadn't actually been released yet. There's been some reviews that have come out since, and there seems to be some quality issues with them. I don't know if that's going to change. I don't know if it's just, you know, some teething problems or something like that. But it's very much a question of you pay your money, you take your chances here. It's like a Restec material. A lot of people don't like it, so your mileage might vary quite a lot here. You can convert them from, I would recommend British Hussars actually, rather than the French ones. Similarly like I did with the Russians, although I did convert those from the French ones. But for, you know, we're getting started. Let's not mess about too much. I'm going to recommend these Warlord Cavalry, even in the knowledge that they're perhaps not quite the quality that we would hope and expect. Now, you get 12 Hussars in this box. Oh, sorry, I should say, I haven't got any at the moment, so I'm just going off what I've heard. So, as I say, this is just what I hear, that the quality is not perhaps where we would like it. So, you pay your money, you take your chances, basically, is what I'm saying. Now, we get 12 Hussars in the box, which is enough for a unit and a half. And currently, Warlord don't sell smaller packs. It's only the regimental ones. So I'm going to suggest that we pick up some Perry Hussars for the Prussians. It's going to be another command set, and it's going to be PN24. That's going to be another £9 and takes us up to £80. Now, we don't need flags for our Hussars, as they didn't carry them. And to be honest, I'm not sure if you get 50mm bases in with the Warlord Cavalry or not. I don't really know. So I'm going to assume that we don't, because you don't with the infantry. So we're going to jump back to war bases. We're going to get a pack of 50mm bases for £1.75. Now, we've not actually got enough figures for 2 regiments of 8 cavalry. We've only got 15 miniatures. But you could always have one guy on a 50mm base and maybe build up the other half with a bit of scenery. Maybe some like smashed barrels or like a smashed up barricade on the street, something like that. Just to give us like the impression of the cavalry trotting through the streets of Place Noire. So yeah, effectively that would give us 2 units of 8. And now with the extra bases that we've bought, we're up to £81.75, which with the £1.75 left over from last month means that we have exactly £20. Now for this I'm going to suggest that second cannon that we did, that I recommended in the historical formation. Again, if you bought one that's running out or one that's firing, then I would get another one that matches that. And I'd also recommend the Prussian generals. So again, the ones that can represent Hitler. And those combined would be £18.50, bringing us to £98.50 altogether. And that would give us an army of 3 battalions of line infantry in 1 regiment, 2 regiments of Landwehr, each of 2 battalions, 2 tiny Landwehr Jaeger units to attach to our musketeer units. We'd also have 2 regiments of Hussars, 2 cannons, which we can either make 1 battery or 2 individual batteries, and all the commanders that we could ever need. We're going to have spare commanders as well. Now, this is less historically accurate than option A, but it does allow us to see the 3 branches in action. We've got the infantry, we've got the cavalry, we've got the artillery. So it allows us to see those 3 things in action. Personally, as I say, I would recommend the first option as a second army or as a side project. And if you were new to Napoleonics, I would recommend option 2 because it gives you a little bit more variation and lets you see all the aspects of Napoleonic wargaming. So that's my getting started guide to the 1815 Waterloo era Prussians. It's just my ideas. If you've got any better ones, and I'm sure there are better ones out there, let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching so far. If you would be interested in an 1806 video, there are limited manufacturers that do them, but there are some out there. Let me know in the comments and I'll get one of those done as well. Thank you for listening so long, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.